Wanted us to find her like that. He wanted us to find my niece soiled in her diaper and my sister lifeless on her bed.
Ramia Remy Griffin was a vibrant 20-year-old mother from Baldwin, Pennsylvania, known for her infectious smile and her presence on TikTok.
At 8:53 p.m. on the night of July 17, 2025, deputies with the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department raced toward the 1200 block of West 87th Street in Westmont, an unincorporated neighborhood in South Los Angeles. The call that went out over the radio was grim and urgent. A possible shooting, a woman down. Officers arrived to chaos, to flashing lights, to neighbors gathering at the edge of crime tape, each trying to understand what had just happened on their street. The early word was stark: shots fired. But when the Los Angeles County Medical Examiner later released its report, the truth shifted in a way no one expected. Joeline Tessa Turton had not been shot. She had been stabbed multiple times. A contradiction emerged at the very heart of this case, one that still haunts her family and community. How could the dispatch say one thing, the coroner another? And more urgently, how could a homicide by multiple sharp force injuries end without anyone being charged? Joeline Turton was 30 years old, a Belizean-American entrepreneur whose life told a different story than the cold, technical phrases of a coroner's file. She was the proud owner of Pepper's Jamaican and Belizean Cuisine, a bright, lively restaurant on Slauson Avenue where the flavors of her heritage were celebrated daily. Customers knew it as more than a place to eat. It was a gathering spot, a slice of Belize in Los Angeles, a corner where good food, music, and laughter lived together. Joeline was more than a business owner. She was a mother, raising her young son while building a future for him brick by brick, meal by meal. Friends and family recall a woman who traveled often, who lit up rooms with her personality, who gave back to her community whenever she could. She was deeply proud of her roots, frequently returning to Belize, sharing culture across borders. But in July of 2025, her life was cut short, and the circumstances of her death left behind more questions than answers. On that Thursday evening, the streets of Westmont looked no different than any other summer night. But at 8:53 p.m., the call came in. Deputies arrived at West 87th Street to find Joeline gravely injured. She was rushed to a nearby hospital, but the wounds were too severe. Not long after, she was pronounced dead. At first, the official word, broadcast in those urgent first minutes, was that she had been shot. Neighbors repeated it, early news flashes ran with it. But soon the Los Angeles County Medical Examiner's Office corrected the record. The manner of death, homicide. The cause, multiple sharp force injuries. Not bullets, but stabbing. That single correction reframed the case. If the public had been told to look for a gunman, now they were left to wonder about a blade, about close-range violence, about an attack that left multiple wounds. The contradictions raised not just confusion, but a deeper unease. Was the initial word simply chaos at the scene? Or was something about this case slipping through the cracks? Detectives from the Sheriff's Department's Homicide Bureau took over the investigation. The facts, as they were able to release them, were limited. The time, the place, the confirmation of homicide, and an appeal for help. Anyone with information about what had happened that night, anyone with video footage, any witness who might have seen Joeline in her final hour, LASD Homicide wanted them to call. The number 323-890-5500 was circulated along with an anonymous option through LA Crime Stoppers. But in the days that followed, no arrests were publicly announced. The case sat in that difficult space between urgent and unsolved, with a grieving family asking questions and a community left with a void. It was Joeline's cousin, Isabel Reyna, who stepped forward to voice what so many in the family were feeling. Speaking through grief, she explained that when the district attorney's office reviewed the case, they chose not to file charges. In her words, it was a DA reject. The explanation given left the family stunned. Both parties, the DA's office reportedly said, had an opportunity to walk away. Joeline had driven to confront someone she had problems with, and in the DA's assessment, that confrontation complicated the case. For her family, those words were devastating. A daughter, a cousin, a mother had been killed, stabbed multiple times, and yet prosecutors said the case would not go forward. Isabel's statement was not polished or rehearsed. It was raw, emotional, and real. She described leaving court that day, trying to process what it meant that the death of her cousin would not be pursued in court, that justice would not be sought in the way they expected. This decision ignited the central question in the story of Joeline Turton. How does a homicide end with no trial? For viewers, it is important to understand how prosecutors make decisions behind closed doors. In Los Angeles County, as in other jurisdictions, a homicide case brought forward by investigators is subject to review. If prosecutors believe the evidence is not sufficient to prove guilt beyond a reasonable doubt, whether because of claims of self-defense, conflicting witness testimony, or the perception of mutual combat, they can decline to file. That decision is usually accompanied by a document known as a charge evaluation worksheet. For Joeline's case, multiple community reports stated that the DA rejected charges. At the time of this video's recording, no official worksheet has been released to the public. So we mark this clearly. This is what the family and local reporters have said, but the document itself remains pending confirmation. Still, the implications are heavy. Multiple stab wounds confirmed by the coroner. A family grieving. And yet, a case stopped short at the DA's desk. For the Turton family, the pain of that choice is as real as the loss itself. The contradictions do not end there. At first, it was a shooting, then it was a stabbing. At first, a community hoped for charges. Then, a family was told no. Each step seemed to shift the ground beneath the truth. And for the people who knew Joeline, the instability of that truth makes grief even harder. Her family spoke about her in ways that made her life vivid. A woman who brought people together, who filled rooms with laughter, who opened her doors not just for profit but for love of community. One relative described how she cooked constantly, how music and laughter filled her home. Others recalled her travels, her generosity, her pride in her Belizean heritage. These tributes paint a picture of Joeline as a whole person, not just a case number, not just another statistic in a city too familiar with violence. They wanted her remembered as a visionary, an entrepreneur, a mother, a light in her community. In late July, friends, family, and supporters gathered for a vigil. They lit lanterns, they prayed, they released light into the sky to honor Joeline's spirit. At Pepper's, her restaurant, the space she had built, became a place of mourning and remembrance. Customers and neighbors came to share stories, to eat in her memory, to support her family. The vigil was not just about grief. It was about resistance, about refusing to let Joeline's story be reduced to confusion in the records of law enforcement or the silence of a case file marked rejected. It was about insisting that her name and her legacy would live on. And yet, the unanswered questions remain. Who was responsible for the stabbing of Joeline Turton? Why has no one been held accountable? If prosecutors decline to file, is the case truly closed, or could it be revisited if new evidence emerges? Did the decision hinge on claims of self-defense, on conflicting accounts, or on something else entirely? Without the release of the DA's official evaluation, the public is left only with fragments. For her family, that uncertainty is a wound of its own. As viewers, we should remember what makes this case extraordinary is not only the violence of that night, but the contradictions that followed. A police dispatch that said shooting, a coroner's report that said stabbing, a homicide investigation that called for witnesses, and a prosecutorial decision that, according to the family, stopped the case in its tracks. Each of these contradictions creates tension, and together, they form a story that is as much about unanswered questions as it is about the tragic death of a young entrepreneur. Joeline's son is now left without a mother. Her community is left without a leader. Her restaurant stands as a testament to what she built, but also as a reminder of what was lost. The lanterns released into the sky were symbols of light, but they were also questions rising into the night, questions that still do not have answers. If you were near West 87th Street and Budlong Avenue on the night of July 17, 2025, between 8:30 and 9:30 p.m., detectives with the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department Homicide Bureau still want to hear from you. Their number is 323-890-5500. Anonymous tips can also be made through LA Crime Stoppers. For Joeline's family, for her son, for her community, the story is not over. Justice may yet depend on someone stepping forward, on a video surfacing, on a witness choosing to speak. Until then, the contradictions remain, and the memory of Joeline Tessa Turton lives on in the hearts of those who loved her and in the unresolved questions she left behind.